Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I am your host Clay, and with me, like always, is of course Katie. Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, other than getting stabbed 32 times in my head. But we
You okay? So
sacrificed to feel better.
you told me this, and whenever I heard that you were getting Botox for migraines, it's an actual thing, people.
Yes.
Um, for some reason in my mind, it's just like I just thought, oh, one little tiny syringe just going in through your temple, and then boom, migraine gone. No, the way you described it of how it's like basic, I feel like it could be possibly like torture porn, like just seeing all these needles just go like just like going through your
Matt
back.
said that I grabbed his hand and squeezed it harder than I did in labor or during the
Yikes.
delivery process. So, but yeah, 32 all over into my shoulders too. But yeah.
That's terrifying. Like I understand that you said that like it's worth it to get rid of the migraine, get rid of the pain, but like just the thought of 32 needles. How long does that process take, by the way?
It's about 20 minutes.
20 minutes. So less than a
My
minute per needle.
Yeah, because it's like 3 to 5 pokes per area. So like they like move your hair and like adjust and everything, and then so they're all able to go in the same area pretty quick. My neurologist said she typically gets it done in 10 minutes, but because I almost passed out twice, it takes a little bit longer.
That is insane. But we have two reviews for you today. Um, and I think I'm gonna leave it all as one episode. I'm not entirely sure. I think
Yeah.
me and Katie will talk about it later, after uh the live is through and after we're done recording. But because these two are actually relatively small in size as far as listening, because yes, Seeds of Starlight is a Audible original, but Tempest Breaker is not necessarily an Audible original, but it is voiced with the full cast,
It's an
and it
audio
is
drama.
and it's meant as an audio drama, correct? We probably will be getting a script book, just like we did with
Yes, it is due out in May.
okay, yes, it is due out in May. We got one for every single phase so far. We got one
Mhm.
for um Tempest Runner, which was in the first phase. Then we had the uh Battle of Jeddah, which was in the second phase, and now Tempest Breaker with this phase. On average, I'm not going to be able to tell you the exact uh hour and minute, but Seeds of Starlight is a little more than 4 hours, while Tempest Breaker is a little more than 6 hours. So, if you're wanting to listen to both, if you have a pretty chill work week, I think you can get both of these done within about 3 days. So, it's really nice. I
Yeah.
listened to both of these on regular speed. I didn't speed them up until today when I was re-listening to Seeds of Starlight. But these were pretty good stories. I really, really enjoyed Tempest Breaker.
Yeah.
Um, that one was really fun, and I thoroughly enjoyed what Seeds of Starlight brought to the overall story, uh, with Tep Tep and Kildo and all of the younger uh, Padawans and Jedi within the story of the High Republic. Um, but that's my non-spoiler kind of baseline thoughts. Katie, what'd you think?
Yeah, I liked what we got with Seeds of Starlight mostly. I feel like The difference between Tempest Breaker and Seeds of Starlight is that we only got one narrator for Seeds of Starlight, which it's a junior novel. Like, it's like, if you think of what this would be on your shelf, it's probably like a middle grade, is what you're looking at. And so it doesn't make sense to bring in multiple narrators, but when you have an audio original type thing, because I won't call Seeds of Starlight an audio drama because there's not a full cast, but when you have an audio specific story, you want to be able to distinguish the different voices that are at play. And while I like the narrator for Seeds of Starlight, I'm gonna have to pull up who it was because I totally forgot. He just doesn't articulate well the different changes. Todd Habercorn. He's done some of the middle grade books previously, but he doesn't hit the different vocal instances, especially between Tup Tup and Kildo is where I had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
With
He
Cam is the main character in Seeds. Cam is different because he's got a vocoder instead of like vocal cords.
Yeah.
Because he was injured and everything. We'll get into that. But the difference is kind of astounding when you put them together, because like I put on Seeds of Starlight this morning and I kept, for my second listen, I have listened to it once already, but I was like trying to pay attention to it during work. And while I was able to pay attention to Tempest Breaker just fine because of the audio differences, I kept getting lost with Seeds of Starlight because there's no like, Cam said this, Tap Tap said this. Like, it's just kind of the changes made.
Yeah, like I am not a huge fan of the voice that he chose for Tap Tap. It was very high pitched and very whiny kind of voice. When I think of Tap Tap and like how she is characteristically, that's not really the voice I gave her.
Yeah.
You know? So and I have to go back because I believe he has done all of the other like younger aged books. And so I think he did the one where Tep Tep was a main character before. So I need to go back and actually listen to see if he gave the same voice to Tep Tep. Now, with that being said,
so he did Escape from Valo and Beware the Nameless.
Okay.
He also did Race to Crash Point Tower and Midnight Horizon.
Yeah, which are all the younger young adult books.
Midnight Horizon is a young adult. The other three are middle grade.
Middle grade. Yeah, that's what it was. Sorry. Now, I think we can go ahead and kind of go into the spoiler territory with this one. Again, guys, if you want to listen to yourself, you can totally do that. Go ahead and pause this review. Go listen to Seeds of Starlight. Like I said, it's only a little over 4 hours long. We said that Cam was the main character for this story. He is a very interesting character due to the fact that, like we said, he does have a vocoder. He got injured, and it talks about how he had to get used to the fact that, like, hey, my voice will never come back from this injury, and this is the new normal. Now, I will say there was one moment that I thought was really cool in the thought process behind this being an audio book or audio original, is the fact that in the moments where he is reaching out in the Force, he does not have the vocoder sound. He has his original voice. And I thought that was a nice touch.
It is. because that tells you what he thinks about himself, and the vocoder is not necessarily a part of him. Though I would like to see, because I pulled up the Seeds of Starlight on Wikipedia just to see who the narrator was. And apparently this is the first of 2 parts. I don't know where that was listed because I didn't know that.
Wait,
So,
I'm Seeds of Starlight. Where does it say part 1?
and is the first of 2 parts at the very end
Oh
of
yeah. Audible, that is part of their Star Wars Adventures Audible originals. See, this is weird because there was an Audible original that was not part of the High Republic.
Mhm.
And then there's this one.
So see,
I
it's weird.
wonder.
I had no idea about this.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to see, because the first we ever heard about Seeds of Starlight was when somebody randomly found it. There's nothing that had like a press release or an announcement or
Yep.
anything. So I think maybe we should, or hopefully somebody has, kind of scoured some interviews or something since it's been found, and possibly somebody did say, hey, this is a part, of a 2-part thing that the High Republic
Yeah,
is doing.
because I definitely don't see a reference to that in the Wikipedia, because typically, like, they cite the references and everything. But in the second part, I would be hoping that Cam kind of grows to accept the vocoder as
Mm-hmm.
part of himself, because, like, I think that would show, like, a lot of maturity and, like, hey, like, I'm accepting this part of myself, this vocoder is part of me, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that was like a big part of this story, is the fact that, like, because of his injury, because of his voice, he became very recluse. He didn't talk a whole
Mhm.
lot. He was kind of shy. And it was a very big point of him and his master. Like, whenever there was moments where he was like, hey, I want to say this, or hey, I have a feeling about this, or these small little moments that they had together, his master did say, hey, that's good. Like, I encourage you to speak up when you have these feelings, or when you
Mhm.
have this thought. Like, speak up so that way we can hear you on these things. And when I say speak up, it doesn't mean volume wise. It means like actually speak instead of just like
Yeah,
keeping it to
vocalize what
oneself.
you're thinking.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, but the overall story here is well, here I could just read the publisher summary. When people start going missing on the oceanic world of Irem, we are going back to Irem. One Jedi Master and 3 Padawans are all that the Jedi can spare to investigate. Upon their arrival, the Jedi quickly realize that there is more at stake than they could possibly have imagined. A dangerous threat has emerged from the crashed Starlight beacon beneath the ocean depths, and no one is safe, not even the Jedi.
and to dive into spoilers, this brings back the drink gear. Because we
Yes.
had kind of been wondering with the Edge of Balance, Volume 3, what kind of was going on with the Dring Gear. I mean, we had seen the Dring Gear in, I think it was Temptation of the Force. And so kind of, okay, what's going on with this? Is the Great Progenitor back? Like, what's happening? And so this does go to show, like, that the Dring Gear is trying to amass, like, an army to, like, protect itself and get itself off-world at the end of this, because it's scared of what's coming, aka the
Mm-hmm.
blight. One of the problems that I had with this one is it's not clear where this is at in the timeline. And
I
so
was thinking the exact same thing, because one of the big things is that Cam mentions that Tep Tep and Keldo have gone up against the Nameless.
mhm,
The last time we spoke about Keldo and Tep Tep was their
before the
very
nameless.
direct, fight with the Nameless. In what was the title of the book? It was
Beware the nameless.
Beware the Nameless. And at the end of that book, Tep Tep had direct contact with a nameless, and she became unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And that was and we had all of these like tinfoil hat thoughts of like, oh, she's gonna be like a really big part of like the the finishing of the nameless and like what's gonna happen to them and all these other things, and nothing happened, and they're just gonna skip over that.
Yeah, and I think this is where the disconnect kind of lies with not having a defined timeline in this case, because like the other thing, so I didn't even put Tep Tep and Kildo together. Like I knew like, okay, they had faced the nameless, so this is after Beware the Nameless and stuff. But Eve Byer, who we saw lost her Padawan in Tears of the Nameless and was kidnapped.
The same master. I thought it was.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely sure if it was the same one.
Yeah. So she was kidnapped by a child of the storm and basically like tortured with the nameless, lost her Padawan and everything, and is like a shell of herself at the end of Tears of the Nameless. And then comes into this and is like, oh yeah, I got another Padawan. Like, that's not how she is, obviously, but like, that's how it kind of feels.
Well, it kind of feels like that, but at this, like, God, now everything's hitting me all at once, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this original now. For the fact that Master Byer is very encouraging, very soft-spoken, and of course, I think she needs to be that way because Cam is who he is, and not saying that, like, oh, he's sensitive, we need to treat him special or anything, but he's just been in an accident. He's a lot younger, it seems like, than her old Padawan. But also, she went through a very traumatic experience with having to stay inside the same ship as a nameless for weeks, I think, on end, depending on how that all goes down as far as the timeline in Tears of the Nameless. And then from being tortured by a child of the storm to being manipulated and controlled by the Drengir in this one. Hey, take a sabbatical, retire from the freaking Jedi Council or whatever you're a part of in the Jedi Academy, and just go home. Like, if I was manipulated like that and tortured all within a matter of like probably a month or two, yeah, sorry. Being a Jedi is not for me. Peace out. Somebody else could take Cam as a master. I can't do this anymore. That's insane.
Yeah. And like, I get we're in the middle of the Guardian protocols, and I get like, okay, hey, we're Jedi. Like, we got to take care of other people first. Like, that's the whole like mission of the Jedi, right? But it's still wild to me. Like, very wild that we're just kind of moving in this direction. So,
yeah.
Other than that, I really enjoy Tep Tep and Kildo as always. I think they're an amazing duo. They're both kind of our LGBTQ representation in this, with Tep Tep being trans and Kildo kind of having that attraction to, oh my gosh, what's his name? From Escape from Vallow. It starts with a G.
Oh, wait. He was mentioned, but not actually here. Do they not have him? Gavi,
yes. Yeah. So those are kind of our LGBTQ representation. I can't remember if Cam talked about it in this book either, but those are the ones I know of. So yeah, so this one came out November 14th. It did get a lot of like headway in that first week of release, so it's been about 2 weeks at this point. And I think George Mann is definitely an artist. He definitely writes a good story, but I think there was some storytelling decisions here that just kind of failed with.
But I also wonder if this was solely a like, hey, we have to kind of add this story just for the fact that we want to do an Audible original, not necessarily like, hey, this is a staple of our phase, and so you have to put a lot of thought into this, type of story.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's kind of like it. He kind of just what's the phrase that I'm looking for? He kind of just like wrote it in, he kind of just like,
Yeah.
here you go. Like he just turned in a very simple script probably, and they're like, okay, yeah, this can work.
Yeah, and that's kind of honestly what it feels like. I will be interested to see part 2, and see kind of how things continue to play out. Because I do think Cam is an interesting character. I mean, we've never like growing up with Legends, like, okay, you just throw him into Bacta and everything's repaired. So to add in kind of the disabilities of, hey, you lost your voice. Hey, like, how does this work now for you? And like refinding that storytelling capability that you had as a youngling. So I do think he's a promising character. And I like that we got the drink gear back and like fully kind of understand what's going on. Like they are frightened of the blight. They want to get away ASAP.
Yeah.
So, because at first with phase 3, it felt like we had just forgotten about the drink gear. Like the drink gear were just something to add on, and kind of the occlusion zone / the blight kind of replaced the drink gear for phase 3 storytelling. So to get those back was good.
Yeah. I do like, and they were like a very small a very small part of Temptation of the Forest. They only showed up at the very, very end. And we had that small subplot that Burry and Belle were kind of like feeling that the Drengir might be a part of things. So this is kind of like leading up to some sorts of either huge confrontation with the Drengir and the Blight. And I'm really curious as to how this will make its headway because of stuff that we are now seeing also in Tempest Breaker. So it's going to be very interesting how all of this kind of wraps up, because we're at the end of 2024. We're looking to end this story of the High Republic mid 2025, summer of 2025, if I'm correct.
I think the release date is June 12th before Trials of the Jedi.
I was
June
just looking at it.
17th.
Okay, yeah. So we were just having this conversation with, of course, guys over at Geek First. This is the end of this story. Of course, we've seen from Tom and Michael over there at Lucasfilm Publishing that they've kind of teased and insinuated like, hey, don't worry, we still have stuff in the works. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be High Republic related, but it might be. And that's the kind of hope that I'm willing to cling on to when it comes to these novels of Star Wars. But like that's, I said it tonight in our Star Wars group chat, and I'll say it here. I think it is absolutely okay that this large story that has introduced us to the era of the High Republic, I think it's perfectly fine with this story having a definitive ending. It was the rise of Marchion Ro and what we can only assume will be the downfall of Marchion Ro and the conclusion of the Blight and all of that stuff and the Drengir. Like, that is one full story. And I'm okay with that ending. But the High Republic era is so vast and so large, and you've kind of already created these little stems of stories that we could
Mhm.
branch off to and be like, I want to know more about this and I want to learn more about that. So I hope it does stay in kind of like the little box of knickknacks that Star Wars has and is able to kind of like, oh, we need a story for, this quarter of 2026. Let's go ahead and throw a High Republic story out there, you know?
Yeah, I would say we're probably looking at a break for the High Republic, probably to give it a couple years and just kind of see how the story matures and how the audience continues to kind of sit with the High Republic and what's come out of it to kind of see popularity. I would say the end of 2025 and early 2026, we're looking at some test case stories for like, okay, what is going to work now? And then maybe end of 2026, we'll see another High Republic story to kind of see how things play out.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But let's go ahead and I think that's it for the Seeds of Starlight. If you want
Yeah.
to move on to Tempest Breaker, this is, of course, a uh, audio drama with a full cast of characters. This was
Yes.
fun.
And this was absolutely fun. And y'all, so we did get this early. This audio drama is available on all audio platforms. So unlike Seeds of Starlight, which is an Audible original, this one is available on all audio platforms next week, December 3rd. So that is when you can expect this. We are going to go into some spoilers today just because this is a roughly 6.5 hour story. So we want to be able to talk about some of the stuff. And with the fact that it is so short, it kind of lends itself to be talked about. If you are waiting on a script release for this one, you are going to have to wait some time because it is not due out until May 13th of next year. So that is that.
Yeah, and we won't, like Katie said, we won't go, step by step every single chapter of this story. We're only going to hit some highlights. We're going to there's some conversation pieces here that I'm sure that we both want to touch up on. But just like any and all reviews that we do, we want to avoid the heavy spoiler stuff. So again, this is going to be available December 3rd. It was given to us, and we did have the green light to start talking about it on the 26th, which is technically yesterday at the time of this recording. So that's why we're going to go ahead and talk about it today, and of course, release this episode on its regular schedule.
Oh, and y'all, so if you want to kind of know where we're at with Tempest Breaker, I would recommend reading the first 10 issues of the Marvel comic.
That is also true.
Very important. It is a big part of the story. This is kind of like the hiatus issue for that because the High Republic Marvel comic will be picking back up in February. So this is kind of your middle piece to kind of get you between the two runs for the Marvel line. Sorry, y'all, I'm congested, apparently.
And also, I want to say, if you were a big fan of Tempest Runner way back in 2021, then I think you're gonna absolutely love this story. They have some callbacks to that story as well. So I think if you want to make a full event of it, I would say listen to Tempest Runner, read the first 10 issues of the current ongoing High Republic comic, and then listen to this.
Yeah. Because it is one big story overall. And as much as they would like to say, oh, you can listen to or you can read the individual mediums on their own, you just can't in this phase, unfortunately. And Clay and I have talked about that, so we're not going to go into it again. But Clay, why don't you dive into it? I'm going to go grab a Sudafed. I'll come right back.
Yeah, so one thing is, I believe this was also something that Tempest Runner did. This is a interview, just like in the first one, with oh shoot, who was the interviewer? She was also in oh shoot. What was this? Dang it. Katie is coming back, so hopefully she remembers the name of the Katie. Do you remember the name of the interviewer that was in Temptation of the Force?
So it is Rill. It is the one with the eyepiece. From like the Rising Storm.
Yes, Rising
We're going
Storm.
around with
Sorry,
a little
not
camera droid.
yes. Real Rill. I'm trying to see, is she's not even in the Wikipedia. That's why I couldn't find her name. But we do see
Yeah,
Boolin again.
I don't think she was named as like an interviewer. In the in any previews or anything. Like I had no idea she was gonna be in this.
But yeah, I really like this part because again, just like in Tempest Runner, this is a Lorna D story. Now, I did tell this to Taylor and Travis. This does have very big implications for the greater story of the High Republic. It deals with the Blight. It deals with the Jedi trying to find a cure for the Blight and all of these other things. Even with like dealing with the fact that the Nameless, and they still need to find a solution to them as well, kind of. So there's small parts of the greater story that do fall into here, which is why I think that it does fit very well in the story of the High Republic. But this story deals with Avar Kriss, with Keeve Trennis, Skier, and oh shoot, what is the little girl's name?
They haven't named her. It's just the Yacombe child.
The Yacombe child, yes, and the Yacombe child, which we actually talked about in the very end of the first volume, which is I think the first 10 issues.
First 5. We have not talked
First
about
5,
the
sorry.
last 5.
Yeah, we have not yet. That is coming out in volume 2. But yeah, the first 5 issues of the ongoing comic series.
So this is the interviewer.
Yes. I have to ask, Katie, did you? And I think this is like, I feel like I know the answer to the question, but we have seen Lorna D all over the map when it comes to the spectrum of good and evil. She's a good guy, she's a bad guy, she is neutral, she, is kind of there just to save her own behind. How do you feel with where Lorna D like kind of fell in this story?
I feel like I would have rather seen this on comic. And I know that publishing continuously can be an issue, and Cavan honestly deserved a break. If writing this story could even be considered a break. But like I feel like a lot is left the imagination when this character has become such a focal point for the comics. And I know she's going back to the comics because we've seen the covers and everything for issue 1. But that's where I struggle with this. And especially like the ballroom scene I'm getting off topic from what you asked, I know, but the ballroom scene in particular, where Lorna is like, man, if you didn't want to be noticed, then Sarek should have found your Marshall another dress. Like,
Oh, so okay, this you make a good point. Screw my question. Let's talk about this real quick. I people are gonna not like this comment that I'm about to make, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I think it's glorious. I love how gay this book is. Okay, so Quinn just drooling over Avar Chris in this dress. Okay, you're right. I need somebody to drop some concept art just to see what Avar Chris looked like. But the whole time, this is a very serious mission. We see Quinn and Lorna D have teamed up with Avar Chris and with
Keith?
Keith Trinus, under special circumstances. They've basically made Lorna D a bounty hunter. They're like, hey, you can be a bounty hunter, but only with a sponsor. And Avar Chris is her sponsor. And so they are.
And I love the pairing.
I do, yeah.
Because especially after the way it ended in Phase 1's comic, like to get the pairing and to see the two collaborate, but also like Lorna actually ends up saving Avar's butt a couple times.
Yeah.
I loved it. Loved it so much.
I love how they are forced to work together because they know each other so well that it only makes sense that they work together. But so they're working together and they find out about this ball that, you know, this planet is having for Marchion Row, and they're saying, hey, he is the guest of honor. He's going to be protecting us from anything and everything. So he's going to be here. He's going to have his nameless. He's going to have his bodyguard. And this whole party is for him. And the whole reason why our team of heroes is even going there is to find information on Bulin, who is, of course, the scientist, the evil scientist, for Marchion Row. And he's been experimenting on the Blight, the Nameless, even Skier in this story. So there's a side mission that that they are also looking for Skier to bring him back home and everything else. But they need Bulin for the fact that he is doing all of these tests for the Blight and everything else. So they're only looking for information. They're not looking to get in trouble at all. But I love that Quinn was just like, yeah, you know, hey, Avar Chris, what's good? You know, how you doing? You know, kind of. And I loved it because Lorna and Quinn have they're an item. They have history, and it's rocky, and you know they hate each other, but they also care about each other and everything else. But Quinn doesn't care. She doesn't care that Lorna is going to hear any of this because she, like I said, is a drooling for Avar Chris, and I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Yes, and like there's just some like where Lorna says something, or I think I love Tay in this too. Tay Sarek, hysterical.
Yes, he is also a really good.
Tay says a couple things, and we do get Kragar back, the bartender from Jeddah, and they help supply a ship to get Tay, Lorna, Avar, and Keeve back into the occlusion zone. And you just hear Kragar in the background like, oh, you know what you could do for me? You could pay your tab. You could pay your husband's tab. You could pay your friend's tab. And Tay's like, like, I can't
sorry, can't hear you. It's breaking up.
And then you just hear, your husband owed me 500 credits. And I'm like, dude, what?
What I love about this is I had always thought that phase 2 was just a fun way to add some additional history to the High Republic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're going back so far behind. There's no way that anything that was done in phase 2 would have dramatic implications other than, of course, what we are seeing the descendant that is
Yeah.
Markion Rowe create this chaos in the universe, right? And they're in the
Yeah.
galaxy. So it's like, okay, you know, that's just a fun little backstory history thing. But dun dun dun. Spoiler warning 3, 2, 1.
Mm-hmm.
We find out that Bulin is a part of the Path of the Open Hand. This
We knew that already.
I don't know why I didn't know this. I don't know why this was like such like a moment for me. Again,
Because it came up when we were talking about Cataclysm, because Bulin is mentioned in there.
yes. Okay, yeah, now it's starting to come back to me. But the thing,
But like we go deeper into it. Like
we
there
go
was
deeper
an
into it.
Easter egg connection with having Bulin's father in Cataclysm, but now we go
Yes.
deeper into it and it's actually confirmed.
Yes, it's actually confirmed. We go back to freaking Jeddah. Like it is, we are actually moving into territory that was solely from phase 2. And I think that's what I love overall is that
Mhm.
like, hey, this wasn't just something that was like just a part of the small history of the High Republic. This is actually stuff that was set up for you to have
Yep.
this aha moment in here.
Yep.
And I love this because Bulin and this was almost as much of a like gasping moment as like the very confused look that we both had when we read one story that had Path of the Open Hand and then immediately turned to the Closed Fist and you're like, what the hell happened, right? Well,
Yeah.
here we like he reveals, quote unquote, reveals that he's a part of the Path of the Open Hand. And that's when even Tay is like, don't you mean the Closed Fist? He's like,
Yes, I love
no.
that. Because
This
it
was
was like
so cool because
we are plugging.
Well, go ahead.
I was like, this is so cool because we are plugging things in. We are making sure it all connects. The red strings are coming together.
Yes, but what I love more about it, even more so, is the fact that we had conversations, even when this was happening. When in phase 2, when there was the definitive like moment when all of those members of the Path of the Open Hand were down underneath in that large bunker. They were all like looking towards the mother to make a decision and all of these other things. And then all of a sudden you just see everybody like, we are the Path of the Closed Fist. And you're like, oh my God. Like we even talked about like, are there going to be people who don't want to go down this path?
Yeah.
And we even saw that during the battle of Dalna, that there was members running to ships to run away, to flee. These were people that did not agree with the idea of becoming this violent group. Bulin, in some form or fashion, lays in a very weird amalgam of both. Because he is such a weird, sadistic, angry individual doing all of this testing with science and everything else. So, like, and working with Markion Rose. So, that path of the Closed Fist is there, like, deep rooted into him. But he still holds the values of the Path of the Open Hand with gifts freely given and freeing the Force and kind of like the ignorance of all of that, because he talks like all of these things with Skier, and Skier's like, hey, that's not how any of this works. Like you're saying all this, but that's not how it works. And that's what makes the ending of this story kind of heartbreaking, is because Bullen had this idea of like, oh, I finally get to fulfill the promise of the path of the open hand, and then
Yep.
it completely goes sideways for him.
And I think it was such an important moment for Bullen, and I'm obviously not like oh yeah, let's like redeem the villain who's been torturing the Nameless and like
Yeah.
experimenting on them and like the Children of the Storm and everything. Not for that. But I think it was such a big growth moment where he looked at his virus that he like basically manipulated the blight off of. So like, because and we're just full there. So Markion had promised a cure, and so he was after Bullen for a cure, and the Republic was after Bullen for a cure. So at the end of this, Bullen is like, "Ha! Here's my cure," and it like fixes people for a time, but then they get these blisters, and like basically they start disintegrating.
And I love the ignorance of Bullen, because again, his idea is freeing the Force. He wants to destroy anybody who manipulates the Force.
Yep.
So in his testing and all of this other stuff, he is manipulating this virus to touch those who touch the Force. But when everything goes sideways,
Not realizing
Avar
everybody
says,
touches
"Hey,
the
you
Force."
idiot. Everybody is touched by the Force." And he's like, "Oh, crap." And then he freaking dies. Like,
He doesn't die. He's alive by the end of it.
oh,
But he gets
that's true.
infected
That's
by his
true.
own virus.
Yeah. So, but he's touched with the virus that he's about to. Like, that was like, that's kind of like, I love how this audio drama works, because it goes in these moments of like, hey, this is technically all a flashback because it is an interview. So we
Yep.
go back to Real and Lorna, and they have conversation a bit. And then they're like, oh, so what happened here? And it's like, oh, well, let's go back and talk about it. And
Mhm.
so it's revealed then that Bullen actually survived. There's
Side note,
this.
the interview process is how the novel of Phasma plays out. So this is not the
Mhm.
first time Star Wars has done that. That's what I really like about Phasma too. But like, continue.
But I like, there's a little bit of like, for me and the way that the story is told, that I kind of have to roll my eyes a little bit, of like, oh, the people who were going to die, let's just throw them in stasis and it's all fine. I had to roll my eyes a little bit at this idea. Now,
Especially when you've had the stasis, but then like you're just letting the blight kind of go with
well,
the Yacombe child, the
mhm,
Lasat. Like, okay, why haven't they already been in stasis?
but we've seen that stasis works before, with the chopping of the
Yeah.
hand of
Oh gosh, I was trying to think of it. You're asking the wrong
I was
person right
thinking of
now.
his name today, and I can't think of it. But yeah, in the prior novels, we have seen that a stasis field can slow down or completely stop the growth of the blight. And when it's like, oh well, how are these people all going to survive? Because there's this like dramatic moment of like Steve and Avar and Lorna and Tay and Skier and Elzar Man, they're all kind of together when all this is happening. And they're like, oh, what? And then I think it's Kiev and Avar that's like, oh no. And they have been infected.
Only Kiev. So
Was it
Kiev
Kiev?
gets the blisters. Yeah. And she's
Okay.
like, okay, everybody else go into the ward next door so you don't catch this. And Avar's like, well, you have to come too. And Kiev's like, I'm not coming. Like, shows her hands and is like, you guys gotta save us. Like, it's gotta work. So, and then Lorna comes in and is able to help Kiev, and then she goes into stasis too because they can't risk her spreading it and everything. But I think like having one of the Nihil, one of the path okay, not necessarily the Nihil, because the Nihil don't want to eliminate the Force. The
Mhm.
Nihil ultimately are just a band of pirates that don't like the Jedi because their leader doesn't like the Jedi. So to see one of the Path of the Open Hand go, okay, I can eliminate those who manipulate the Force. But then he figures out, okay, but I can't, because everybody is kind of manipulating the Force just by simply being alive.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big moment. Let's talk about Keeve, because I feel like Keeve is like the secondary character here compared to Lorna.
Mhm.
And I feel like Keeve ultimately has the bigger moments here, because so we know for a fact that she leaves the Jedi at the end of the High Republic.
Okay, yes, let's talk about this because I have a question for you. Keep going.
So Avar, and I found this very interesting. Avar in this instance first calls her a failure when they get back with Baron Bulin and Lorna and the Ataraxia and everything. And Avar is like, you are the biggest failure of the Jedi. I cannot believe that you would do such a thing. Talking about Keeve going off to go find Skier in the occlusion zone without permission. Even though Avar kind of did the exact same thing.
Hypocrite. Yes.
And
yes,
Avar does
very much
say,
so.
Elzar called me out on this, pointing out that I basically did the exact same thing. So I'm sorry. And she does apologize. But then she calls Keeve the light of the Jedi. And in the first book, everybody kind of assumes that Avar is the light of the Jedi.
Mhm.
So transitioning this role to Keeve, especially knowing that she leaves the Jedi, I don't know how I feel about this.
Not only that, what happens literally at the end of this story? Keeve is granted a new title.
Marshall.
This, like, I'm kind of upset at this. Okay? Why? This is the question that I had to ask. Why do all of this? And again, I feel like it might be because they want it to be more dramatic when you finally see her like drop her lightsaber and legitimately walk away from the Jedi. I don't know if we'll ever actually see that. But she is now a marshal. She is seen as like the best of them now from probably the one Jedi that is highest on a pedestal out of all of the Jedi right now.
Oh.
Why do this?
She literally,
if we know
Avar literally walks in and tastes her because, like, is that the hero of Hetzal?
Yes.
Like, Tay even does that. Like, so sorry.
So it's like, why do all of this for her character when we know that that she walks away? That she like it almost makes me believe that the Jedi are not going to, which is really stupid of me to even say this out loud. It makes me feel like Marchion Ro is not going to be held fully responsible for the things that are happening right now. And she's going to be so pissed that she's like, you guys, I'm out. Like, is that possible? Am I too out there for that assumption?
So here's what I'm thinking for Marchion after this. I'm thinking Marchion is going to go off into the Never Ever. And he's going to raise little Everany babies. I don't think he's actually going to be punished because I don't think the Republic is going to be able to find him.
Oh no. If that's
we're gonna repeat
is,
this cycle. Ray's gonna be facing Marchion Rose babies.
Katie. If this story ends with Marchion Ro saying, "You'll never catch me, Kappas," and runs off into the Outer Rim into the unknown space, like I'm gonna be so pissed.
No, I'm totally joking. Going back to Kevin Scott's newsletter, he said there is a definitive end for this. And I think if Markion Rowe gets to escape or doesn't face the consequences of his actions, I don't think that's a definitive end. So I was totally joking.
But see, I kind of disagree with you because things can get resolved without the villain getting his comeuppance. Like,
No.
you know?
No.
I don't know. I think we'll have to agree to disagree
Well-
there. But in all honesty, the way that this could end, like, and I had that thought today, is like, why give her such a title and do so much for her character? Like, what does the Jedi have to do as a group of individuals to get Kiev to be so angry at them to walk away? And I think it would be to let Markion Rowe go.
I think she walks away for another reason. I think ultimately Skier may fall back into the syndrome that Baron Bulenkill cures him of in this, but he may fall back into that and want to stick around as a theoretical Jedi, not necessarily like an active force using Jedi, but Skier still has very useful knowledge that can be applied and everything. And if the rage can be maintained, then he can still teach and everything. And so I think ultimately it's going to come down to Skier is exiled for something that's out of his control with the, I think it's McGrack syndrome.
Well, now that I even think about it, because of Bulin's very ignorant decision with the blight, is it possible that he didn't? Yeah, could he not have even cured Skier?
I think that's fully possible. Because it's just like, I don't think, because he even says, and I know he meant like with the blight cure that he did, that he said, well, I gave you back your force powers for a little time. Like, so is that like in regards to the blight cure, or is that
I think him saying that was like, hey, like, I gave you back your powers for this short amount of time. Now this cure is going to kill you. Like, I think that's what he meant. I don't think he meant, oh, by the way, that cure, like, it's still coming to get you. Like, that it didn't actually cure anything. Like, I don't think he meant that.
I don't know. But I think it's going to have something to do with Skier. It could also have something to do with Avar. Like, maybe Avar wants to publicly have her relationship with Elzar. Because I could see that fight coming to a head.
Yeah, I think because again, a very vocal part of the Jedi is Vernestra, and we know that Vernestra is very like anti-Elzar man. So if anything is going to ruin that relationship, I think Avar will fight for it. And I think Kiev could be like, hey, this is the wrong fight to have. This is stupid. If y'all are gonna fight over this small shit when we had to deal with all of this like galaxy ending scenarios that we've had to deal with in the last few years, then peace out. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. I think giving her the title just kind of shows, like, I think it does articulate what the authors are trying to do with, like, okay, hey, because Kiev at this point is maybe like 22. So I think a lot of the thematics for what the High Republic has been about is like, okay, the younger people of our generations can actively change the way things are done and like make an impact. So giving her the title continues that thematically, and having her leave the order is also part of that theme because you're stepping away from something that no longer matters in the end to you. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
No, I agree with that. I can totally agree with that for sure.
So going back to Lorna, this does, I feel like, complete Lorna's story because Lorna has kind of made her transition and she kind of knows what truly matters to her at the end of this. Like having Quinn by her side. I love at the end, Rill's like, so this is the Lorna D, right? And Lorna's like, nah, she's named after her captain. And the captain is Quinn. And Quinn comes in and is like, no, this is not
Quinn
named
is
for
such a
Quinn.
dumb. This is such a dumb name for a ship. Like, no, it's not going to happen. But I love, again, we talked about this during Tempest Runner. The fact that names mean so much to Lorna, it really shows who she is as a character.
Yeah.
And, there was this big conversation piece at the ball with her and Markion. And we even questioned this. Like, we talked about this when the art piece, when the concept art came out of Lorna and Markion dancing at the ball, we were like, oh, like, how is this going to be? Is it going to be very violent? Are they going to be flirtatious? And they were both. They were both kind of like leaning into it, but also like secretly like, hey, I hate your guts. Kill me now. Well, you could kill me now. Why don't you do it? Like, it was such a good moment. And I do agree with you on this moment. Like, I think that having this visually would have been amazing. I think it would have been great to have this. But, Lorna tells Markion, like, oh, like, you made a wish and it came true. And now what do you got? You got nothing. You are sitting on top of the galaxy and now you're bored. You got nothing else to do. And you got nothing on me now. Because you are just Markion Ro, the eye of the storm, and that's all you'll ever be. And I love that because names mean so much to her. Titles mean so much to her. And giving that to Markion, like even though she says near the end, like, oh, like, I still fear you a little bit, like, I highly doubt that now.
Yeah.
Because of everything she's been through, being able to confront Markion Ro the way that she did at the ball. Like, I think that she, like you said, has fully, like, I think, of course, everybody has the chance to develop as a character. But for this story, I think it's gone full circle. I think her story is mostly done. I could see her being added into small little pieces here and there. But, like, this is it. And I really did love the story for her.
Yeah. Cavan tells such a very succinct story. And I know he's told it over the comics too, but I feel like Tempest Runner to Tempest Breaker is a very complete story that it is phenomenal, to say the least. So yeah, I think that's the big points.
Yeah.
Keeve, Lorna, Tay and Skier and the Bond twins and Kelnaka all return in February when the Marvel High Republic comic starts up. So
yeah, I am going to enjoy reading that. I will say this. I have been able to kind of manipulate my day-to-day stuff, and I'm able to actually read comics sometimes during the week. I am going to try especially after Tempest Breaker, I'm going to try to catch up on the main story and try to read it week to week. I don't know if I necessarily will be able to, but I've enjoyed this enough to be like, hey, yeah, I'm back on board with the comics. and not that I haven't been, but just because we had talked about like it's so much easier just to grab the trade, read it all at
Yeah.
once, and everything else. This has given me the be like, hey, maybe I can read it from week to week if I have the opportunity to. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really love the intensity of it. I love the implications of it because even the final showdown between Lorna and Markion Rowe, they are literally going at it, freaking blades to lightsaber, fist to fist, and he gets stuck under like a whole bunch of like sheet metal and stuff, and he is actually like, "Don't kill me! Like I need to tell you what Bullen's plan is and all of this stuff." And Real even says, like at the end of the story, she's like, "So you can't really say anything
Say
about
he's
this
dead,
whole,
right?
you can't say he is dead or anything else." And she's like, "Hey, like his ship going into the atmosphere, like into orbit, like that's all in the records." She's like, "Yeah, but it like almost immediately left after that." So like it has this implication of like how slimy and slithery Markion Rose still is,
Hmm.
but like we've seen it more than ever now. Because even Lorna said it in this story. It's like he can bleed, which means he can die. Like
Yep.
he is just another person, just
And
like
he
any of
even
us.
tries to take out the full planet to prove to people he's like, take out everybody who saw it. Nobody can know that I bleed. Like,
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like the fact that she bit him and made him bleed, I was like, yes, this is amazing. But it was pretty intense where he's just like,
mhm.
kill everybody. Kill everybody. And like Lorna's like, yeah, this is what happens. He's a psychopath. But like even Avar was like, Lorna, like, why would you do that? Like the implications of this literally killed thousands. Like, why
Yeah.
did you do that? She's like, well, I just had to. Would you rather me die? Like, come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love this story. Again, I think I will be very sad if there is a indefinite hiatus of the High Republic when all is said and done. But I really do hope that the sale of the script book in May does really well, and they're like, hey, we should continue. Like it, I hope that it's just one more thing that reaffirms the publishing initiative to be like, hey, maybe we should keep going with this.
Yeah. We'll see for sure. But everybody, hope you have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Americans, at least.
Yeah. My boss said it today. What was the quote that he said? I'd never heard anybody say it like this, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. He said, "Happy Thanksgiving to all, and to all a full belly." And I was like, that is great words.
Yeah.
Wise words for Thanksgiving. But yeah, happy Thanksgiving for everybody who celebrates American Thanksgiving. And we will see you guys next week when
Skeleton Crew
premieres its first 2 episodes. But of course, you can always find me at Fanboy Clay on Blue Sky. Guys, I think we're finally getting to the point of convincing our GUA chat to move somewhere else. We're getting there. We had conversations about it today. But yeah, go join me on Blue Sky. I'm going to be gearing more towards my nerdom of Star Wars and Power Rangers and comics and all of that, my job stuff, over on Blue Sky. So if you like the content that we already talk about, go follow me there. Yeah. And as far as my other show, Ranger Alliance, we're talking about the comic Power Rangers Prime. Should be an episode out there right now with me and Joe. We're going to be talking about issue number 2 in excuse me, like there's an air pocket burp just like settling in my chest here and I can't talk. in November, we have some really big plans coming out for the new year, and I hope you guys are going to join us for that. Not ready to announce it yet because I want to just like let the dust settle for 2024 and just go big in 2025. So be on the lookout for that. Katie, what about you?
Y'all, you can find me on most social media platforms. It is at Sleeps with Katie. This show you can currently find on Twitter. It is at Star Wars Alliance without the A in the Wars. Very important. Don't forget it. Remember that username is how you can also email us at gmail.com. Star Wars Alliance at gmail.com. No A in the Wars. 830-538-4828 is where you can text us or leave us a voicemail, especially with Skeleton Crew coming next Monday, guys. 2 episodes. You want to talk to us about a show. You do. So, but yeah, we love hearing from you guys. So yeah. With that, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you're listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you.